Firstly, what is your reaction to Tucker Carlson's monologue? You put out a tweet today with angry emojis, and of course, you've written a definitive book on the subject.
Well, I mean, I don't want to mix it up with the passing of Queen Elizabeth, who was a gracious, dignified old lady who deserves to be remembered politely and with respect for the very selfless life of abnegation that she led. And I've always said that she's a monarch who doesn't rule, she reigns, and therefore she cannot be blamed for much that happened. Even under her watch, some of the worst atrocities of the British Raj occurred in the 20th century. And while Jallianwala Bagh was before she was born, you can't say that for what happened to the Mau Mau nationalists in Kenya, the Malaysian communists, and all sorts of other groups who were grossly mistreated by British colonialism. But the central question that Mr. Tucker Carlson completely evades as to whether the British were more benign than other colonialists. I mean, that's in Krishna Menon's famous line, it's like asking a fish whether it would rather be broiled or buttered. The fact is that for us, it's not the question of us saying the British were better than had we been colonized by the Germans or the Belgians. I mean, the fact of the matter is that what the British did was to come to a country where they had no business to be, initially ostensibly to trade. They realized that because of its current or then prevailing circumstances, they could establish military control in order to enhance their profits. And they ruled the country essentially to loot it. So they came into a country that was rich and prosperous and proceeded to drain its wealth. This has been amply documented, going back to Dadabhai Naoroji and R.C. Dutt in the 19th century, to my book. And after my book, Professor Ursa Patnaik did a study showing, estimating at 45 trillion, the amount of loot and drain that the British took out of India. So the fact of the matter is, Tucker Carlson might want to be nice about a monarch who passed away, but to use that as an excuse to extol an empire that was essentially guilty of plunder, rapine, loot, pillage, and worse is absurd. I mean, it is absolutely preposterous. For every single thing the British did in India, whether it was building a railway station or laying a rail line or building a law court, every single thing was done in furtherance of British interests, to enhance British profits and to advance British empire. It had nothing to do with the benefits for the Indians. The rail lines were laid down at considerable expense, paid for by the Indian taxpayer, in order to extract more resources from the hinterland and take them to our ports. Bombay had this great terminus that Tucker Carlson is so excited about because it was a port city. And that's where they could export stuff from India and import stuff into India from Bombay. Similarly, when you look at things like the law courts were to exact British justice, to keep the Indians under heel. It took a very, very long time before an Indian was even able to sit in judgment on a Briton. And the number of British judges who let off British murderers are on various specious grounds because their victims were Indian. Whereas an Indian who so much as raised his hand against a Briton could risk being sentenced to life, hanged, or being transported off to the Andamans, and in earlier years as far as Singapore. So there's simply no question of praising the British for doing whatever they could to enhance their own rule. And this gentleman is a right-wing, I don't know what to call him on American television, but there's no reason to take him seriously until you decided that you wanted me to.
Well,